On today's episode of the Goblin Grenade Podcast, we have some BNR news for Magic the Gathering and an update for Dragonstorm of Tarkir moving forward in Arena. We have some Path of Exile 0.2.0 information from the live stream that was done last week. But first, we have that great intro. My name is Dom Douglas, and I've been playing Magic the Gathering for what seems like forever, but in fact it's only been on and off for about 30 years. With that comes an expectation that I'm the best player ever. You couldn't be any more wrong in that statement. What I do like, however, is having a lot of fun. Whether it be playing Limited, Draft, Commander, Standard when I get the chance, Arena, Magic the Gathering Online, it doesn't matter as long as a good time is had. And with that, I have some opinions, not just of Magic the Gathering, but also video games, comics, maybe even a TV show or two. This is the Goblin Grenade Podcast. Well, folks, we have two topics today for the podcast, and if you don't know who I am, my name is Dom Douglas for Max Heroes and Villains YouTube channel here. This is the Goblin Grenade Podcast, where we talk about Magic the Gathering stuff, video game stuff, nerd culture stuff, but mostly Magic the Gathering, hence the name Goblin Grenade. And we're going to talk about some Magic today as well, but also Path of Exile 0.2.0, but we're going to do that in a special way. That's right, it's going to be me on location for our sister company, Extreme World Wrestling, before the internet show Survival at Carolina Beer Temple. But we will go over the BNR announcement first, folks, and it was heavy-handed, I'm not going to lie, on certain aspects. On other aspects, I don't think it was. It's a strange BNR because they hit a lot of areas. The biggest piece of news, though, in this, Standard had no bans whatsoever. And the reasoning, and I kind of agree with it, except for two cards, it is healthy, but it is still one or two. It's healthy. There's a lot of deck diversity, but they're also kind of considering that they're lumping in all the decks that are playing up the Beanstalk and Monstrous Rage. Monstrous Rage is being played in three different decks right now: Prowess, Aggro, and Mice. And Gruul, even. Gruul Aggro. So that's another deck type that it's being used in. So we were expecting Monstrous Rage at minimum to be banned in Standard. And some of us thought maybe also up the Beanstalk, but nothing happened. And they say it's healthy, but they also say the next set coming out, Dragonstorm Tarkir, might actually help some of the issues with Rage and Beanstalk. And some people had issue with the town ain't big enough. This town ain't big enough. That's the thing, though. Like, I think Beanstalk in that Domain and Zur Overlords decks that is played in is a bigger problem than this town ain't big enough. The other thing is, Monstrous Rage not getting banned kind of surprised me. I can see why they didn't, but oh my gosh, this deck is being played in 3 to 4 different deck archetypes in Standard, but they're considering each different archetype a separate piece, whereas if you combined the percentage of the meta that Monstrous Rage is being played in, it is over 30%, which is usually their threshold. If a deck is 30% of the meta, that they will nerf and ban 1 or 2 of the cards. And this time they simply didn't do it. So I kind of agree with it because, once again, it is healthy. I tend to not be a fan of Standard anymore when I was a huge fan when I got back into the game about 10 years ago. But right now when I play in Arena, the deck diversity is kind of okay unless I get hit with a really bad run of like the mono black discard decks. But that happens maybe once a week and at random times of the day. Then the Pioneer, nothing, which makes sense because Wizards barely supports this format, and it's a shame. Pioneer is some of the most fun Magic that I've played. My Pioneer slash Modern deck is one of my favorite decks to play, and I'm building up another Pioneer / Explorer deck for Arena, which is kind of like the first deck that got me back into Magic the Gathering, like a homage to it, if you will. It was, as I said before, Tolarian Community College. The professor did a $5 or $10 deck tech. I think it was $5 on Azorius Heroic. And that deck got me back into playing the game and got me... That was the first deck that I looked that I like kind of was like okay with spending some money on. Obviously, it was $5 to $10. I was just brand new living in North Carolina, and it was fun to play. And it got me back into the game. It got me back playing the game to the point that now you can look right here and see all the commander decks behind me. And 2 of them haven't been updated to Architect yet. So yeah, Pioneer, nothing. But once again, it's a health. From what they're saying, there's no real boogeyman, if you will, in that format that's never supported. Modern, however, Underworld Breach was banned. We all saw this coming with after how successful the Grinding Breach decks were, to which there are like 2 or 3 different versions of the Grinding Breach deck. But the most successful version of the deck was the Teamer version of Grinding Breach. And the Underworld Breach is basically the engine for this deck, and it's why over 30% of the field was playing this deck. Remember, that 30% threshold is what Wizards kind of looks at when a card or a deck archetype is being dominating in a format. They look at that 30% number. And for Standard, they didn't do anything with it. With Underworld Breach, it was understandable because when you have a deck that's 7 out of 8 places in like a Pro Tour, that's alarm bells ringing right there. And everybody saw it coming. And it was a fantastic brew, and it's been around since 2019, but over like the last year, it got like so much more powerful with some of the cards that were printed that it just became obviously the meta, to the point that if you're not playing it in your sideboard, half of your sideboard, which is 15 cards to switch in and out in between the first and second game or the second and third game to try to make your deck go up against other weaker matchups. Well, when half of your sideboard is being dedicated for Grinding Breach decks, that's where the problem also lies. And then in Legacy, a format almost never touched for the most part, Troll of Khazad-dûm and Sowing Mycospawn are banned. Okay, Legacy is some of the most powerful Magic next to Vintage that you can play. Almost everything is legal except for obviously like the anti-cards and a couple other cards from Magic's history. And it also has the restricted part as well. Restricted is basically you can only play 1 card in your 60 card deck. And that includes a sideboard as well. The Troll of Khazad-dûm is considered part of your mana base because it's got that swamp cycling in it. But it also lets you play reanimate spells and a lot more of them in your deck to kind of get Troll of Khazad-dûm for real cheap. Like turn 1, Troll Khazad-dûm, swamp cycle it. Turn 2, bring it back and get a very powerful creature on turn 2. Which is Legacy. You know, it does... Legacy is a very degenerative format when it comes to how powerful it is. But sometimes stuff flies a little too close to the sun, or in this case, the Orthanc, and Troll of Khazad-dûm got banned. Sowing Mycospawn, however, breaks an unwritten rule in Legacy that your basic lands are basically protected for the most part. Your basics, like the plains, mountains, swamps, forest, there's very little cards that target basic land destruction. A lot of the land destruction that's been printed in the last like 15 years or so, or 20, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure from 15 years on, has always been focused on non-basic lands. Well, with Mycospawn, you can grab any land from your library, basically get a wasteland, and then exiling a target land on top of that. So it's a 2-for-1 shot, basically, with the Mycosynth, if it's kicked. And being down 2 lands in turn 3... or 4 in Legacy, because remember, Legacy plays much faster and has the ability to explode mana bases. So on turn 3, you can legitimately have 3 to 5 mana sources available to you. And losing 2 lands is really devastating. So that's why Mycospawn was banned in Legacy. And then Vintage. Nothing was banned in Vintage, but they have said Lurrus of the Dream Den is on the chopping block in the future again. This card was already originally banned under the original Companion rules in Magic the Gathering, and then brought back after the rework of Companions. Because the original Companions was basically broken, you had a free card in hand. You had a free 8th card in your opening as long as you played a Companion. And we're going to put this in perspective, besides Lurrus. The last singular card banned in Vintage, which is everything legal, restricted list included. It's got its own restricted list. Everything is legal except for, we'll get into it. The last singular card that was banned was decades ago. To the point that the best that I can see online and going through research, the last singular card, and it was 3 of them that were banned in Vintage, was in 1995. Just about 30 years ago was the last time a card was banned. A singular card was banned in Vintage. Those 3 was Channel, Chaos Orb, and Falling Star. And I think Channel was put on the restricted list later on. So, yeah, all other Vintage bans have been cards with conspiracy type for the conspiracy sets, or the sticker cards in unsets. You know, it's been a very mass group thing. Lurrus is on the chopping block again, and it's going to be funny because I'm not too well versed, but if Lurrus gets banned again, I think it's the only card in Magic's history that has been banned twice. Companions, when they started, was a much different monstrosity than it is right now. You'll see, like, you have to pay 3 mana to bring it from your companion to the companion zone to your hand. Wasn't like that before. For me, that was like 2 minutes. For you, it was not even half a second. Kahira, the Orphan Guard, was a 1 in hybrid green-white mana, 2 of them, for a legendary cat beast. It is companion. Each creature card in your starting deck is a cat, elemental, nightmare, dinosaur, or beast card. You could have this in its own separate companion zone as long as the rest of the deck meets the requirements. But this card is your companion. You may cast it once from outside the game. So you could just cast this for its mana cost. No faking around, no faking the funk on the nasty dunk right there. You could do as long as it was in the companion zone. You can cast it. So it was an 8th card in hand. So it was an 8th card in your opening hand. They had to completely change the rule to say you may put it into your hand for 3 generic mana, then cast it. That's how broken Companion was. And Lutri was banned in Commander before it even came out. So, technically speaking, the fastest ban in Magic the Gathering's history, with an asterisk on it. So that was the Vintage bans. Then Pauper. Pauper got hit with some big bans, too. Basking Broodscale, Kodatha Rebirth, and Deadly Dispute are banned, along with Prophetic Prism and High Tide being unbanned. Yes, they did unbannings too today. Once again, Modern Horizons 3 card is at the forefront of a ban. The 3 bans in Pauper are to stop the Broodscale deck combo. And this deck infinitely combos with Sadistic Glee for unlimited mana and an instant kill creature on the field. It can wipe out any game once the loop has been established. You get infinite amount of mana, and you get a big 1,000 creature that will have like trampling on them. So you can't really win the game at that point. Deadly Dispute was an instant include in a 4 in any deck that was playing black. So every black deck out there had 4 copies of Deadly Dispute, which also meant you were playing 4 copies of Ichor Wellspring for lots of drawing power. So that tandem combo right there was just too brutal for Pauper. And if you don't know what Pauper is, that is the format where it's nothing but common rarity. Okay, so there's common, uncommon, rare, mythic rare. You can only use commons in Pauper. And this was allowing you, this one combo was allowing you to draw 5 to 6 cards at a time. And Kodatha Rebirth would just steal wins after creature board wipes and lead to lots of unwinnable games from turn 1. So if you had the Rebirth in hand, which lets you make 3 1/1 creatures, your board gets wiped. Your next turn, you do that, and then you get the there's like a surge cost zombie grenade goblin that'll give everything haste. Or so, you've swung in for 8 damage at that point after the board was wiped, and there's not many board wipes in Pauper, so basically it's game over at that point, and the game was already over from the opening 7 as long as you had Kuldotha's Rebirth in hand. Now, the 2 unbans, however, is because High Tide has almost kind of been in this weird legal zone in Pauper. It was legal in paper, but not online, and there was a time where the online Pauper was the rule list for paper Pauper, and and now they're just aligning it ever. So technically speaking, from what I understood, High Tide has never been legal in Pauper, and they want to see how this might work. And Prism was unbanned because they believe the field has corrected itself since it's been banned and can now handle it. They also did say, if in the next few months this proves to be a mistake, both of these cards will be banned again. So we got unbannings in Pauper. Alchemy, no bans. I don't care for this format. Explorer, nothing. But once again, this is the arena version of Pioneer. And at this moment, they did say there's only 7 cards missing between the 2 formats. Cards at Magic Online, the original Magic the Gathering. The original way to play Magic the Gathering Online is called Magic the Gathering Online. And it was released like over 25 years ago. But they have the more Explorer, Pioneer lists available, and there's only 7 cards in those lists, and they're only being played in maybe like 10 to 15 instances in decks. So 100% parity between Explorer and Pioneer is almost there. So yeah. And then Historic, Timeless, and Brawl, nothing. I just wish we can get a Brawl format 100 card that didn't have Alchemy in it. I will let you all know, full disclosure, I don't like Alchemy. I don't like the cards. I don't like the format. I don't like the fake cards only because I'm get it. I get it. I'm old boomer talk here. I'm a 1-to-1 purist. I really feel that if you have cards that are available in Arena, I think you should be able to go to a store and play those cards because that's what Arena started as. And the introductory way to get into paper Magic was Arena and also make money. I get it. It's a corporation. They're supposed to make money. What are you supposed to do? Not make money? But the thing is, I just don't like Alchemy cards. I don't like the fake cards. I consider Alchemy a fake format. And you can tell me all you want that it's your favorite format until you're blue in the face. I don't believe you at all. And then the other day, they released patch notes and whatnot in Arena, but the update for the weekly update, they call it. And this weekly update had something spicy in there, and I'm waiting for this to happen. Starting with Tarkir Dragonstorm, major sets on Arena that release on MTG Arena will come in 2 parts. The pre-patch the week before, and the actual set release on release day. What does this mean? Well, you'll be able, when the pre-patch comes in, you'll be able to view and interact with all the incoming Tarkir Dragonstorm cards in the Arena client, including creating and importing decks with these soon-to-be available cards. So if you see a stream that's happening tomorrow, like on the 2nd of April, which will be around the time this is airing, you can, in fact, copy that list down, import it into Arena. I don't think you can use the wild cards yet. I don't know. I haven't been able to see it. But you can also, future editing Dom, if it drops today, will probably let you know with like a video package or something right here. Thanks, future Dom, or sorry, future Dom, that you're not appearing. So you can do that in Arena and actually look at the cards, because I've been pre-building a deck or 2 for Tarkir, mainly dealing with the new version of Siege Rhino, because Debris Beetle and Siege Rhino, I think, and some blinky type of shenanigans is actually going to be a fun deck to play. So I think now I'm trying to lock it in for a budget of $15, which if you don't know, I on Thursdays, I think, or Fridays, I want to try to say either Thursday or Friday. We're still locking in the dates. I'm doing deck techs now, and my budget deck techs are around $15 and under if you buy them online or you go to a store. I've always felt when people use the word budget for Magic, it's kind of a loose term. It's like a $50 budget deck, or this is budget brew, and it's like a $110 deck. No. I'm getting the essence of the deck, how the play patterns go, to see if you like it and see if you want to improve upon it, and it's only going to cost you probably two Happy Meals, or a Zaxby's order, or a pizza from Pizza Hut, or your Chinese food. Either way, one takeout dinner and a half, maybe, depending on where you live, for an actual Magic the Gathering deck. So your wallet's not hurting, but also you're still getting what this archetype wants to do. And if you don't like it, you can take some of those cards, trade them to somebody else, or trade them back to a store for credit or whatnot, or put some of them in your commander decks as well. Anyway, I'm working on this new Siege Rhino, Skirmish Rhino, Debris Beetle combo type of deck. And I think with this, actually being able to see the cards and whatnot, and possibly be able to upgrade the deck, maybe, or slide them in for the future and be like, click later type thing, I think it'll actually be nice. Now, I wish we could play them with Sparky, but, we can hope for the future, but I really like this update. And then they go on to say, why are they doing this? It allows us to put out bug fixes, new features, quality of life improvements, and all the bits and pieces required to release a new card set ahead of schedule, so that come release day, all you need to do is jump in and play. And if something goes horribly wrong with the pre-patch, hope for the best, plan for the worst, we have a week to fix it. It's a win-win, and we look forward to trying it. One of the biggest complaints about Arena is release day is a nightmare. Release day tends to go well for the first 2 to 3 hours, and then there's this 5-hour gap where the client just falls apart and can barely hold on. And some people never have this problem, while others do. Me personally, I experience it maybe 25% of the time, where the client is so bad that it's almost unplayable. Or stuff happens where the game crashes all the time. So this gives us a week. It gives them a week to fix things up. And I appreciate that as well, that they're doing the pre-patch hopefully today. And if you saw future Dom, editing Dom, that means it came out today, and I was able to mess around with it before I got this video out. If it doesn't, well, that means it didn't come out today. It's coming out on a Wednesday. But on that front, we are now going to take you to past Dom at Carolina Beer Temple in Matthews, North Carolina, for Max Heroes and Villains sister company, XWW's show Survival, that happened just last week. How's it going, everybody? Dom Douglas here, and this is the in live whatever at the venue skit for Goblin Grenade Podcast, episode 9. Figured I want to talk about Path of Exile 2, 0.2.0 update here at Carolina Beer Temple in Matthews, North Carolina, right before XWW show Survival. So if you're seeing this now, the show's already happened, but, we're here for setup and whatnot. Right behind me is the ring, so you're going to hear them being set up, but you can see me right now. And Path of Exile 0.2.0 update that drops April 4th, and wow, was GGG, also known as Grinding Gear Games, was on fire for this, folks. Not only are we getting a new class, we're getting new ascendancies, new character system improvements, new endgame content, and a whole bunch of other things, and I'm going to rapid fire this before it gets really crazy during the setup before the show. We got about 2.5 hours before the show starts here, and it's going to be an amazing night. That being said, the Huntress class dropped. It is a spear-wielding warrior mixing melee and ranged. You can either use the spear to melee attacks or throw the spear to do more damage. And I think they've figured a great way out on mixing both. And the biggest complaint that I've heard time and time again about Path of Exile 2 is melee is hard class to play. Warrior right now is super powerful, but very, very complicated to play, and you're glass cannoning it as best as you can. So the Huntress has a parry skill as well. On a successful block, you stun the enemy that tried to attack you, and then your follow-up attacks will do more damage. But if you parry too much, you yourself are going to get stunned and are going to take more damage while you're stunned. It is very movement-based tech. I want to say it's kind of like high-class archers, Deadeyes, that are rapidly moving all around the stage. You can also combo elements with this. You can throw your spear into a fire ring, and that spear will catch on fire. Or if you have a tornado ability happening, you can throw it through the fire, through the tornado to get fire tornadoes. GGG is absolutely cooking with this right now. The rake ability that they also dropped is a open wound / bleed damage AoE effect over time, if you don't know what AoE means. And you can have a companion as a skill set for the Huntress as well, but you can only have one at a time. They didn't really go into too much information from what I saw on the 40-minute video, but that is the base. That is like the basics for the Huntress, except for the 22 new skill gems on the that are being dropped as well, because they're dropping 100 new skill gems when 0.2.0 comes out as well. The ascendancies that they revealed for the Huntress, the first one is a Ritualist. It's called Ritualist. It's dark harnessed powers, and you sacrifice, I guess, your life and shield to do curses and plagues on the enemies, which is going to debuff them. You can also add it also will add an extra ring slot in your necklace. I don't know how that's going to play out personally, but I think it's going to add more options and more builds for the Huntress. And then you can use corpses around you to get stronger for short periods of time as well. Then the Amazon Ascendancy is more of a traditional sword and board class. Debuffs enemies, you get extra elemental damage and a higher crit chance as long as you're holding a spear and a shield at the same time. And then they introduced 3 new ascendancies for the other classes. Warrior is getting the Smith of Katava, which can forge weapons in the middle of combat to add elemental damage of your choice. So if you're facing off against enemies that are weak to ice, you can stop in the middle of combat or in between combat and infuse ice or any element that your enemies are going to be weak to. You can gain extra weapons as well, and Smith's Masterwork is it looks interesting. You custom build your body armor with this ascendancy. So I'm going to see how that plays out. They're definitely thinking outside the box on this one. The mercenaries get Tactician, which is suppressing fire for enemies and can place multiple barriers, improving your damage. And then it's got the Unleash Hell ability, which swarms the area with arrows. So it's good to see arrow-focused gameplay coming back. And the Witch gets the Lich class, which sacrifices life for energy shield, or you do it for extra damage. And then cursed enemies explode for chaos damage and extra curses on enemies as well. So that was the new ascendancies that they brought out. And then on top of the skills, Ray's Spectre now has spirit reduction on how powerful you want the trapped monster to be. You can summon Roas, which you can either have them be attackers for a little bit of damage, or you can ride them for extra mobility. And then on top of the 22 gems supported, there's going to be 78 other gems, support gems as well. They want more building options viable and easier to play with as well. And they are focusing on melee as well because, as I've said earlier, the melee is just absolutely... To get to the end build on the melee classes in Path of Exile and the Warrior, it's very hard. 100 new unique items as well is dropping in this patch. Most of them will be endgame items, so after you complete the campaign on Cruel and you go into maps, there's new crafting tools, there's new currencies as well, runes now have multiple tiers as well, because the runes were just always base 6 to 10 extra damage or 6% extra. Now you'll have more runes. So like on tier 1 it might do 2 to 3 extra cold damage, and then by like tier 5 it'll do like 10 to 16 cold damage. So it's going to scale so you can use runes in the end game as opposed to everybody basically using the chaos prevention damage. The Asmarian Wisps are new combat parts of stages involving infused monsters with elite, boss enemies, and rare mobs being extra powerful, dropping more of that new currency. And then each wisp has different modifiers that eventually, when you get to the last fight in the wisp, it will eventually have all those modifiers on there to drop more gear and more gems and whatnot. And new endgame map is dealing with the Asmonian lands as well. And then we get to the end game. There's now 10 more passive points, 10 more passive Atlas points that you can unlock. There's more random content in the end game, less busy work, 7 new maps, along with the Asmarian lands, which makes 8 new maps in total. And each of these maps have different end results. Not like beat the boss or beat X amount of enemies. They're trying to do something different than what mapping has been so far since early access release. Then the next thing they did is Rogue Exiles. They're going to be like you, but they're going to have to... It's going to be a fight to the death. It's as close to a single-player PvP as Path of Exile can get. The advantage to it is they're geared up with gear that they're going to use against you. But if you beat them, they will drop all that gear, and you can actually reload or get better gear this way as well, along with 4 unique strong boxes, which strong boxes have been notoriously bad in this game so far. It's almost not even worth opening up. And one of the new strong boxes, you have to beat waves to get the loot, and each different strong box has a different fight mechanic involving it and a different loot table as well. Doriani is going to task you with cleaning effective nexuses. Now, the way Atlas points used to work is you beat like X amount of tier 1 maps and you get 2, and then X amount of tier 2 maps, and so on and so forth. That's not happening in 0.2.0, whereas now you actually have to purge the affected nexuses in the lands to get those ability points. And then towers have been changed as well. Everybody's complaining about towers. It's a one-shot thing. You can only do the... Am I in frame? Cool. Thank you, Ernesto. Costa Rica's greatest export.
What's up?
Said you're Costa Rica's greatest export.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
That's the introduction to Ernesto to the Goblin Grenade Podcast here at Carolina Beer Temple in Matthews, North Carolina, once again for Max Heroes and Villains. Thank you for watching, liking, and subscribing, and all that other awesome comments that you've been leaving in the likes as well. Back to the towers. They are being redone. There's less towers, but the towers affect more maps, so you're doing less tower work. And in those towers, you can actually now unlock 3 tablets to modify the maps around you. So that is an impressive upgrade, and I'm very happy with that, because now you don't have to worry about towering around and planning out and spending an hour to plan out your route and then finally get to the playing. A big announcement, all endgame content as well is available at Dawn of the Hunt League. That's what this league is going to be called. That means you will be put in the quote-unquote, whatever they're going to call, Forever Realm. So you can have, if you've already rolled out a character and you're happy with it and you don't want to do the new stuff, cool. You can still do that super hyped level character that you have. You're just not going to be in a fresh economy anymore. And that's the biggest thing about Seasons. They did note that Waystone Cetaceans, the maps, is getting improved. When you used to die in the map, that was it, especially if you're a solo player, you only got 1 crack. Now you're getting back to 6 opportunities to beat the map level, and that was my biggest complaint about the game so far. Like in maps, in endgame, if I got a really cool, awesome juiced map and I accidentally mispressed a button and died, that was it. Game over, had to redo the map, and it went bye-bye. Finally, everything is being tweaked to the lower difficulties. not lower difficulty. Sorry, you at the very very end game. I forgot what they were called because I've not got there yet. You would lose XP, you would lose the map and whatnot. Now there's no penalties. You don't gain XP, but you won't lose experience either. They're trying to make the lower difficulties have an easier time while still maintaining the difficulty of this game, which I appreciate. There is new microtransactions that are dropping as well as Dawn of the Hunt. And remember, in Path of Exile, all the microtransactions are just cosmetic. They do not give you an advantage in gameplay whatsoever. And that's how GGG has basically been one of the best action ARPGs out there, because you get no special abilities for putting money in on a free-to-play game when eventually it does become free-to-play. So yeah, a good shout-out to GGG for doing that. And then they added Recombination, which unlocks after the first expedition, which, once again, I've not done expeditions yet unless it's a new thing. And you can combine two weapons to try, or items of the same type, to try to make a better item, but you will lose both items in the process. And at the very, very end, a slight nerf to high-end crafting while boosting and buffing low-end crafting. So it's not going to be grinding for hours and hours and hours to try to get that one awesome item. There's actually things that you can do that lock. One of the new currency items, I think, locks in one of the abilities of the weapon, and it can't be changed. It can't be altered no matter how many times you use currency to re-roll that item. That particular stat will always stay the same. So on that front, that was my rapid fire 0.2.0 Path of Exile 2 early access patch notes and Dawn of the Hunt season that drops April 4th. I don't have a wrestling show next weekend at all, so I know what I'm doing besides Dragon's Dark here pre-release. So once again, this is Dom Douglas for Goblin Grenade Podcast, Max Heroes and Villains YouTube here at Carolina Beer Temple in Matthews, North Carolina, as we set up for Survival for Extreme World Wrestling, sister company to Max Heroes and Villains. And now back to me in my bedroom in the normal podcast setup area. Yeah, Path of Exile 2 0.2.0's patch notes have not come out yet. If they do, it might be its own separate video, because I'm already expecting those patch notes to be ridiculously huge, because just the 100+ gems alone is going to warrant enough information so we can start theory crafting. I am not doing the new class as my first. I like to do something called starter builds. And for me, Path of Exile 2, 0.2.0, Dawn of the Hunt, my starter build is the Minion Army Infernalist, and I went to Max Roll GG, and I'm basically just using their guide. It almost doesn't require the starter builds in Path of Exile that I tend to choose. Don't really need powerful legendary weapons and whatnot, as long as I hit like certain breakpoints in damage and whatnot. The build itself will carry it till I start earning good currencies and start upgrading the build then. But it's basically, I like starter builds that cost minimal amount of currency, in-game currency, because there is no way to buy power in this game unless you go to an off-site basically an offshore site that has nothing to do with grinding gear games, and that's on you if you get ripped off in that way. But so I can actually start grinding currency, so when I go to that Huntress build that I am going to be playing, I will at least have some currency to have a nice smooth run at it. And the worst case, it is a witch build. It is a witch class, so I can always spend a lot of money to undo most of that. But I'm going to have to make a new class because they won't let you actually undo ascendancies yet. So I'm going to have to figure that out. Do I do ascendancies with this class as well? It's viable up until a certain point, but ascendancies help. But if I can get away with not doing ascendancies and then turn it into the class, my big build, the fun build that I do in this current first season of Discovery, I think it was inadvertently called, of the witch, that basically has the ice wall built up. I throw a fireball at it, and it breaks up everything, and everything breaks up into 10 different fireballs. Yeah, I love that build. But that's what I'm going to rock with in Path of Exile 2. Short of something happening while I'm editing this episode later thanite for release on Wednesday, the 2nd, this has been the Goblin Grenade Podcast. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for commenting and subscribing here at Max Heroes and Villains. My name is Dom Douglas, and may your top deck always be mythic. They actually unbanned High Tide.